Good morning, everyone. Good to see all your faces out there. Before we start our class, let's start with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to be here, to look into your word, to learn what you have to tell us about how we should live our lives. And we just ask that you would give us wisdom and give us the courage to live out the things that you tell us to do. These things we pray in your Son's name. Amen. All right, last week we began a class and it's titled Living by Faith in a Faithless World. And I should explain that a little bit. This isn't a totally faithless world that we live in. There are millions of faithful people, but our culture that we are living in is turning away from the Christian faith more and more. And we looked at some statistics last week that were kind of depressing and sobering about the religious scene in America and Europe specifically. But I thought we would look at a few more statistics this week that are a little more encouraging, and that's looking at Christianity in the entire world. So that's what we're going to begin the class with. So Christianity in the entire world is growing, and the decline that we see is mostly in Europe, North America, and the developed Western nations. And so let's look a few of those numbers. So worldwide in 1910, there were 600 million Christians in the world. And by 2010, that had grown to 2.2 billion. So it has more than tripled in that century. Currently, that last number was in 2010. Currently, it's thought that there are 2.5 billion Christians in the world. That makes up almost a third of the total population of the world. This next slide talks about the population growth compared to the growth of the Christian population. The numbers of Christians are growing by 1.27% per year as compared to the overall population growth of 1.20%. So actually, worldwide, the number of Christians is growing a little faster than the overall population, which is encouraging. Then last week we looked at some statistics about atheism in America, and over a certain amount of time, I forgot right offhand, but the number of atheists in America has doubled, and in Europe the rates of atheism are much higher even than here. One country, I think it was the Czech Republic, actually 25% of the population was atheist. But worldwide, according to these statistics, in 1970 there were 165 million atheists in the world, and today there are only 138 million. So that's trending in a good direction, and that's expected to fall further to below 130 million by the year 2050. One of the bright spots for Christianity in the world is Africa. In the sub-Saharan Africa in 2010, there were 517 million Christians, and that's expected, according to studies, to rise to 1.1 billion by the year 2050. So in these next 30 years, it's supposed to double, or from 2010 to 2050. It's expected to double. And that's the countries in Africa below the Sahara Desert. As most of you know, above the Sahara Desert, most of those countries are dominated by the Islam religion. Another bright spot is China. We don't have very reliable statistics about China because their government, of course, is opposed to the Christian religion, and they are persecuted there. But it is estimated that 5% of the people of China are Christian, which in that huge population of 1.1 or 1.2 billion people in their country, that means there's around 55 million Christians, and that number is expected to continue to grow. In 1900, there were twice as many Christians living in Europe than there were in the rest of the world. Today, both Latin America and Africa have more Christians than the continent of Europe. So the population of Christians is shifting to the south in numbers. And by 2050, they expect that the number of Christians in Asia will also pass the number of Christians in Europe. And even in America, we looked at those statistics last week, that even though in Europe and America, the number of Christians is declining in proportion to the population growth, the actual number of Christians is still growing slowly. In Europe, it's 0.04% per year growth, and in North America, it's 0.56%. So even though we're declining as a percentage of the population, there's actually more Christians each year than there were before. But we live in a culture that is in kind of a decline, and that could be discouraging for us. And I thought that it would be good for us to look at some people in the Bible that were faithful in discouraging times. And that's what we're going to do today. First, let's look at Noah. We mentioned Noah last week, but let's take a closer look. I think most of you are familiar with the story of Noah. During his lifetime, people had gotten to the point where they were so evil that God decided that it was time to wipe them out. And there was only one family, Noah and his family, that he found righteous. Genesis 6:9 tells us that Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked with God. Speaking of Noah, God said in Genesis 7:1, "Enter the ark, you and all your household, for you alone I have seen to be righteous before me in this time." And then in 2 Peter 2:5, we're told, "God did not spare the ancient world, but preserved Noah, a preacher of righteousness, with 7 others, when he brought a flood upon the world of the ungodly." I think there's quite a few things that we can learn from the story of Noah. First, we learn that he was faithful. He was righteous in God's eyes. Do you have the fortitude that you you could be a Christian even if everyone else on earth wasn't, if they had all turned away from God. Think of what a horrible situation that would be, what pressure there would be on you. But Noah was faithful even though everybody else wasn't. Second thing we learn is that God paid attention to that. Even if everybody else on earth abandons the Lord, if we're faithful, God's going to take note of that, and He's going to be watching over us. Noah was willing to be the only faithful person in the world. That reminds me of the story of Joshua. What was Joshua's statement that he's known for? That's right. He said, "Choose this day whom you will serve, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." Joshua was willing to go alone to be the only faithful person left in the nation of Israel. And we need to get that attitude in ourselves. We need to get to the point where it doesn't matter what everyone else does, that we're going to remain faithful and to do His will. Noah was not overcome by peer pressure. Have you ever felt peer pressure? I think we feel that more when we're teenagers, and we get over that a little more as we're adults. But we're heavily influenced by the opinions of those around us, and it can be a battle to fight those feelings. That passage we looked at in 2 Peter says that Noah was a preacher of righteousness. I imagine that he attracted a lot of opinion. I don't know how long it took him to build the ark, but two of our kids have gone to that Noah's Ark in the state of Kentucky, and they sent us pictures, and it's supposed to be made in the exact size of the ark that Noah built. And it's this huge structure. It's a huge ship that he built. And as he worked on that, I imagine it was the talk of the town. And I'm sure a lot of people came out there and asked him what he was doing. And 2 Peter tells us that he was a preacher of righteousness, that he was trying to save those people who were going to be lost in the flood. Another thing we learned about Noah, even though he was the only faithful person on earth, he patiently followed God's commandments. God told him to build an ark. I mean, that must have seemed strange to Noah, but he just obediently went about building the ark and making the preparations. I don't believe that Noah modified his sermons to appeal to the masses. How many people did Noah convert? None. The only people that were saved were him and his 3 sons and their wives. So was Noah a failure as a preacher? He didn't get a big crowd to come to the Lord, but I think he just told them the truth. And there are times in history when people won't listen to the truth. Think of Paul's missionary journey. Did he have different reactions in different places where he preached? He had more success in some cities than in other cities. I think of the city of Athens. Paul gave one of his most famous sermons in the city of Athens. It's a masterpiece of a sermon that people admire down through history. But it said that very few people listened to him. And I think maybe we can learn some lessons from that incident. Athens had some similarities to America, didn't it? What was Athens known for? Anybody? What was it famous for? Okay, temples? Yes. Okay, they worshipped a multitude of gods, so it was a lot like America in that way. That we are surrounded by a multitude of different religions and a multitude of different worldviews. Athens was also a center of learning in the world at that time. Can you think of any famous philosophers that came from Athens? Aristotle, Plato, Socrates. In the story about his sermon there in Athens, what does it say about the people of Athens that they used to spend their time in? Art?
I remember that was where I think they were worshiping an unknown God to cover the
Yeah, they worshipped a multitude of gods. They even worshipped the unknown God, and that's where Paul stepped in to introduce them to this unknown God. But it also says the Athenians used to do nothing else than tell and listen to new things. They like to hear new worldviews and new ideas, and I think that's kind of similar to America. We're surrounded by a lot of new ideas and worldviews all the time, and bombarded with these ideas. And what does that tell you about the economy of Athens if people could spend all their time standing around talking about new ideas? They were a wealthy society. They had leisure time. They weren't just trying to scratch out a living and work night and day to survive. So that's a lot like America. We are a wealthy nation, and we are surrounded by many ideas, and we're a center of learning. And I think all of those things may have an effect on people's willingness to listen to the truth of the gospel. So maybe that kind of explains why at this time in history people are a little less receptive to the gospel than they have been in the past in our society. So Noah just preached the truth, and most people didn't listen, and the world was destroyed at that time. But Noah himself was faithful, and he just did what God appointed him to do. And what did God accomplish through Noah? What great work did God accomplish through Noah? He saved the human race. I guess we would have gone extinct if Noah hadn't been a righteous man in the Lord's eyes. We all of us here trace our ancestry back to Noah because he was the only one saved at that time. And Noah is a member of the People of Faith Hall of Fame listed in Hebrews chapter 11. Noah was a faithful man, and the Lord rewarded him for that faithfulness. So that's an encouragement to us. We are in no way in the same situation as Noah was in. There are millions of faithful people around the world, and we're not alone like he was. But we can get discouraged when we see churches shrinking and people not being as receptive as they were at one time to the gospel. So let's remember these things about Noah. Let's be faithful no matter what. Let's just preach the gospel. Let's not try to change it to please people. Let's just faithfully do what God has appointed us to do. And God can work through us. And maybe we can help bring about a revival in our own country. Another man that we can look at is Elijah. Elijah was one of the Lord's prophets. He was one of the most spectacular prophets. More miracles were done through Elijah than anybody except for maybe Moses and Jesus himself. But was Elijah ever discouraged? Remember the big confrontation on Mount Carmel. Elijah brought all of the priests of Baal together on Mount Carmel and assembled the people of Israel. And then he built this altar and challenged the prophets of Baal to pray to their God and to accept their offering, and nothing happened. They went into a frenzy. They were cutting themselves and chanting, and I don't know what all they did, but nothing happened. And then Elijah presented his offering and had the people pour water on it, and then he called out to God, and God sent down fire and consumed the offering. And it was a spectacular show of God's power in opposition to Baal's power. But after that, Jezebel was so angry that she threatened to take his life, and Elijah went into the desert, and I think he traveled all the way to Mount Sinai. And so while he was at Mount Sinai, he's living in a cave, and a voice came to him saying, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And he replied, "I have been very zealous for the Lord Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, broken down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too." That's found in 1 Kings 19:13 through 14. So Elijah was discouraged. I mean, the people had forsaken the Lord. They had gone after idols. They had killed the prophets, and he was feeling like he was alone in the world, the only faithful one left. But what did God say to him? He just sent him back to work. He told him to go back, anoint Hazael king over Aram, anoint Jehu king over Israel, anoint Elisha to succeed you as prophet. These were actions that the Lord was going to use to bring people back to the Lord. Jehu, killed a bunch of the prophets of Baal. And Elisha was going to carry on the work of Elijah. So even though Elijah was feeling alone and discouraged, God was still working through him, and he just told him to go back to work. And one other thing he told him was, "Yet I reserve 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed down to Baal, and all whose mouths have not kissed him." That's 1 Kings 19 and 18. So the Lord wanted Elijah to know he wasn't alone. There were still 7,000 that hadn't bowed the knees to Baal. And we need to remember that too when we get discouraged. There's still a lot of faithful people in the world, and we're not alone, and the Lord still has work for us to do. Well, what are some of your thoughts on this? Let's kind of open it up to a discussion here. Do we ever feel discouraged when we see churches shrinking and some churches have ceased to exist? Yes. Okay, yeah, we need to be thinking of the next generation. Judy is saying that she sometimes feels discouraged about the state of the world and things that are going on in politics and so forth. But she thinks about her grandchildren and that we have to think about their future. So we can't give up. We just got to keep working. Art? Okay. Yeah, Art, for those of you who are listening online, Art is saying that he's lived through some discouraging times. The church that he and several other of the members here used to attend at Peninsula has ceased to exist, and that's discouraging when you see a church that was once thriving to decline, and that's happened to several churches in this city. Christianity is in decline in the United States, And we live in the part of the country that is in the most decline of any part of America. And we have the least number of churched people. And so it can get very discouraging for us, but we need to realize that God is still working and not give up. Ben?
I was going to say, in our lifetime, it seems that way, but God is always with us. We should never be discouraged, though it's hard to be. But I have to say that Satan is out there, and he wants to use the world to discourage us.
Mm-hmm.
I look at the media and the politics and all that's going on, and I just have to shake my head and say, you people really aren't in control. You people cannot direct anyone's life. People allow them to, but they really can't. It's a choice we all have to make. And that's what these people that we're looking at did. They made a choice knowing that they would be in discouraging places, yet they chose God and knew that God was with them.
Okay. Yeah, Ben's also talking about discouragement and how we can look at these people in the Bible who went through discouraging times and they persevered and God rewarded them for that. So that's the most important thing for us to do is to realize that when God's with us, we're in the majority, no matter what things look like on earth, and that's the important thing. Any other thoughts? Yes.
Yeah, I just want to say that we need to remember God is in charge. When we get discouraged with politics or whatever, remember God is still over everything.
Okay. June is reminding us that we need to remember that God is in charge. He's over everything. And we don't always realize or understand why he allows certain things, but we have to believe that he knows what he's doing and that good can come out of anything that we're facing. We can be an encouragement to people in the future by the things that we do now. They can look back and say, look at how those people persevered and through troubling times, and we can have an influence. You know, we talked about Africa and what a bright spot that is in the world right now in terms of the growth of Christianity. And I read a book a few years ago about David Livingstone and his work in spreading the gospel in Africa. He went to parts of Africa that no European had ever seen before. And I imagine that was kind of discouraging sometimes, working with those people and trying to get them to understand. But the work that he did and the work that many other missionaries who followed him did is really paying off dividends now, and it's very encouraging. Someone told me, I think it was Steve Merriman on Wednesday, said that if you give a person a Bible in Africa, they'll go start a church. And that's exciting to think about that, and to think about the people in China who can go to jail just for being a Christian, still persevering. My father-in-law, Dick, 80, said that he heard a Christian in China say that if you haven't gone to prison for your faith, you're not a real Christian. So that's encouraging to us to see that courage that people have in these other places. Maybe one of the worst things for us is our affluence and ease of life here. Maybe that's one of the reasons people aren't as faithful. Well, that's all I have for today. Next week, I want to start looking at some of the reasons people give for leaving the church. And there's a lot of different reasons that people are leaving the church. And so I want to take them kind of one by one and examine, is that a valid reason? Is there something that we can do as a church to correct that problem? Or is it something that the Lord doesn't allow us to change, that we have to? I mean, there are things that we as Christians have to tell the world that are going to be offensive to the world. When you tell somebody, when you bring the gospel to someone and tell them that this is the way to be saved, why do they need to be saved? Why does a person need salvation? What? That's right. It's because they're sinners and they're condemned in their sin. That very statement is going to offend a lot of people in the world. And so there's things about the gospel that we cannot change, but there are things that we can do better at, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of those things in our upcoming classes. So thank you for your attention this morning and your comments.